Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome to today's video. So Natasha Denona, she almost got me this time with her latest golden release. And I'm actually kind of glad that I didn't buy it because after looking at my makeup collection, I have discovered that I actually have some alternatives for you with similar color stories to the Natasha Denona Golden Eyeshadow Palette that was just released. And I want to get into this video. Let's dive right in and talk about these alternatives to the Natasha Denona Golden Palette. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Welcome to today's video. As you guys saw, we're talking about the new Natasha Denona Golden Eyeshadow Palette and alternatives that you either have in your collection or alternatives that you could go out and purchase so that you can get a similar look with the Natasha Denona like vibes. So if you guys are new here, my name is Staci. I feature unfiltered makeup opinions, makeup tutorials, the unfiltered makeup series, like the unfiltered series. So go check that out after you're done with this one, as well as like videos like this where we kind of dive into my stash and see if we can find an alternative for a new makeup release. So let's get into this video. First of all, I want to point out that some of this product could be you possibly have it in your collection. So if you do, pull it out because you can get very similar Natasha Denona Golden vibes. And I want to start with the indie makeup first. Let's start with the indie makeup first because there is one palette that really came to mind when it came to the Natasha Denona Golden palette, and it was Love's Journey by Sydney Grace. Now this is actually a 15 pan eyeshadow palette. This does actually feature cool tones and warm tones in it. But overall, when I was looking at the new Natasha Denona Gold eyeshadow palette, I noticed that a lot of the shades in there were kind of more of a neutral shade. And it offers the grungy golden tones that we crave in a gold palette, but it also has some of those like almost like mauve-y, salmon-y looking brown shades. And then it also has these cool tones in here. So if you're looking for just like almost a neutral that also offers like those grungy golds where you can create like a grungy gold or a grungy bronze look, this eyeshadow palette definitely has it. It also has some really nice like lighter foily shades as well. And they're cool toned and they're also a little bit more neutral toned. But overall, I found that this eyeshadow palette could be a good alternative if you're looking for something that offers warm tones and cool tones, and it's by Sydney Grace. They have a very blendable formula, a very easy formula to work with. I actually think that Sydney Grace shadows are pretty comparable to Natasha Denona shadows, and I think, honestly, this is a good alternative. If you don't like all the shades in the Golden palette, that could be an alternative for you because it offers cool tones, warm tones, all in one palette that is like beautiful, blendable, pigmented, and just it's insane. So this is not a full eyeshadow palette. I honestly consider it to be more of a condensed version of the type of theming around the Natasha Denona Golden palette. I've watched a lot of reviews already on YouTube, and I've noticed a lot of people saying that some of the colors are quite a bit repetitive. I don't know if that is true or not, but I have definitely seen a lot of creators mention that it is a little bit repetitive. So maybe a dumbed down version of that palette is what you're looking for. I definitely recommend the Sigma Warm Wishes. This is 6 pans. I believe it's still available on their website, actually. It's actually the entire Warm Wishes collection. But this came out in Christmas of 2022, and it is like an all warm with a little bit of cool mixed in there for eyeshadows. And it does have this beautiful gold. It has a really nice bronze. It has like this reddish brown shade. It has this really beautiful like brow bone highlight champagne-y shade that the Natasha Denona formula has. And then it also has this really nice dark brown as well. And this actually has a really nice range because it's warm with a little bit of cool tone thrown in there. But I truly felt like this was a really great alternative to the Natasha Denona Golden palette. If you're like, you can get so many looks with this one. It does offer that almost wet look because the Sigma formula is just, absolutely stunning when it comes to any of their shimmer shades. They're very pigmented, very blendable, very easy to work with. And like, if you look at this, this is a gold shade. Like this could be used. This could be used. And you could create some very similar, inspiring looks from the Golden palette with this palette as well. I don't remember how much that retails for, but I do know it was in a collection, the Warm Wishes collection. So if it's on Sigma's website, I'm going to try and link it down below for you. A brand that is drugstore, and I believe this palette is also still available, or if it's not available, do you have it in your collection? Because this was a huge hit in December of 2022. I caved and I bought it, and it is the Not a Box of Chocolates palette from ColourPop. This is a very like chocolatey, goldeny feeling eyeshadow palette. I actually kind of feel like this is very, very similar to the Golden palette, but I feel like the Golden palette has a little bit more light tones in here, whereas this is very like deep, dark, chocolatey browns with some hints of like the reddier browns. It doesn't really have those super light, sparkly, wet looking shades in there, but it does offer that same kind of brown, warm chocolate feel. To me, this doesn't feel like an orangey chocolate. It feels kind of like a very deep, muted, like deep chocolate bar, like dark chocolate is what it reminds me of. But I definitely feel like you could get some looks with the Not a Box of Chocolates from ColourPop. I believe this retails for like $16. This is one of my favorites. The formula in this was very, very pigmented, very, very blendable, really easy to work with. It did have one of those really weird like pressed like glitter weird formulas. I didn't like that one, but it does have like your grungier shades in here if you're looking to make like a halo eye. It does have that like bronzy, almost goldeny shade. It just doesn't have a true golden shade, but I definitely felt like this played with the vibes of the Golden palette from Natasha Denona. It is a little bit more on the dark side, but I definitely feel like if you're vibing on it, you could get some looks with it. Let's talk about this one. I know that this one is 100%, if you have it, you have it, but you can't buy it anywhere as far as I know. It's the Huda Beauty Gold palette. This came out a while ago. At first I saw this and I was like, I don't need it. And then I actually bought it and I love it. This has very similar vibes to the Golden palette from Natasha Denona. It actually has a lot of different like eyeshadow toppery shades in here, but then it also has a true gold shade, almost like a yellowy greenish gold as well, like right here. And then it also has some like really pretty gold peachy shades. So this isn't exactly in the ballpark of the Natasha Denona Gold palette, but it's gold themed. Maybe that's why I picked it. But honestly, I feel like you could get some very inspiring looks from the Golden palette and incorporate it with this palette. I don't believe you can actually purchase this anymore. It's a 9-shade eyeshadow palette, so it's a little bit limiting on what you can do. But honestly, I found that any kind of monochromatic palette that only has like all browns, you typically get very, very similar looks, even if you only have like 5 shades or 9 shades or whatever. And on the high-end side, this one you can still purchase. It's the Naked Honey from Urban Decay. Look at this beauty. It's 12 shades. I believe this retails for $54. It does come with a brush. This is one of the best like formulations that Urban Decay had for a very, very long time. This was like really, really good. This is more like orange yellow leaning, whereas I did notice that the Gold palette doesn't have as much of that orange or like yellow pull to it. And Angela Bright actually did swatches comparing this to the Natasha Denona Gold palette, so I will try linking that for you in the description box down below. Definitely go check that one out because it's really informative in and of itself. But I definitely feel like you could still get some gold inspired looks with the Naked Honey palette. So I truly feel like there are some like mini eyeshadow palettes that Natasha Denona has released that also flow into that same theme with the Golden palette. The first one would have to be the mini nude palette. This one's very, very warm toned actually, but it has that like copper penny shade. It has a really nice nude here, a very nice like champagne leaning shade, and then it has like this bronzy shade right here, and then you also have a very dark matte shade. I feel like this mini nude is the mini golden to a T. Another one, which really isn't available anymore, but you may have this one in your collection, would be this one. It's the mini Metropolis palette. And I know that like green is not a thing in the new golden eyeshadow palette, but this one does, it leans a little bit more yellow, but it does have that true gold in there, a really nice, deep, dark brown shade. It has this really light shade as well, and then it has this almost like yellow shade. So the yellow doesn't really go with it, and neither does the green, but I did really feel like these three shades are really, really similar to it. These both were like $27 on the Natasha Denona website, but I definitely felt these color stories were really, really similar to the golden palette as well. Through a BoxyCharm exclusive, she released this eyeshadow palette, and it is the Alloy palette. This actually has a lot of the shades that were released in the Baby Gold, which was the 3-pan eyeshadow palette. If I remember correctly, the Baby Gold had this shade here. I believe it was I think it was this shade, and it was like this shade down here. But this eyeshadow palette, the Alloy palette, was a BoxyCharm exclusive. So if you had BoxyCharm, you may have gotten this eyeshadow palette, and it's a dumbed down version of the golden eyeshadow palette. It has those warms, but it also has those cool tone browns in it, and then it also has that nice goldeny coppery shade and this really nice like deep bronzy shade over here, and then you have 3 really nice mattes. The Alloy palette definitely reminds me of the golden palette, but I honestly think like if you have these two, you could also be set. You could be set. But let's take it a step further, because Natasha Denona released this palette last year. It is the Yucca palette. And yeah, okay, hold on a second. Just hear me out. Hear me out. I know that this is like greens. It's warm. It's got some browns in it. Just a couple shades that if you have this palette along with like just some warm like brown shades, or even like the box of chocolate shades, if you have this palette, you could actually pair them together and you could still get that like wet formula look that she has in that eyeshadow palette. And one of them would be Plantasia. This is actually really pretty, but it would look really nice with those neutrals. And you could definitely get that. It's that same formula, the wet formula, and you could definitely get it with this eyeshadow palette. And then also this shade right here called Como Ribeye, or whatever it's called. Correct me in the comments down below. But I definitely felt those two. And then you also have this really deep, dark brown shade that's very, very, very similar to ones in the bronze palette as well. But I know that this one pulls a little bit more like green, but I was thinking like as far as like wet eyeshadow looks, that you have these two shades right here that are very reminiscent of the Natasha Denona Golden palette, and you could use this in combination with maybe another palette. If you guys are curious about the golden palette, I'm going to link some videos in the description box down below so you guys can see like eye swatches and like comparisons to other palettes that other creators have done, because I don't personally have the golden palette in my possession, because I found that all these other eyeshadow palettes in my collection, like they suffice for the golden palette that Natasha Denona did release. There's some alternatives for you. If you have these palettes in your collection, pull them out, get some inspiration from them, go watch a tutorial with the golden and, you know, match up colors from other eyeshadow palettes to really just vibe on that eyeshadow palette. But I guarantee you, you have very similar eyeshadows in your collection. Definitely pull these ones out if you have them and go get inspired by the golden palette from Natasha Denona. Thank you guys so much for watching and staying tuned to the end of this video. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing and hitting that like button, commenting down below your thoughts on some of these eyeshadow palettes. Did you buy the golden eyeshadow palette? I want to know if you did. And if you have any of these in your collection, does it compare to that? Thanks guys so much, and I hope I get to see you in my next video. Bye!